Imagine that everything you see right now, this room, these walls, the people around you, even your own hands, is not reality itself. It's a construction, not a lie, not a dream, but a model carefully built by the most extraordinary machine in the known universe, your brain. Think about that for a moment. You have never actually seen the world. You've never touched it directly. You've never heard a sound exactly as it exists. Light never enters your mind. Sound never reaches your consciousness. The outside world sends nothing more than tiny electrical signals, and somehow, inside nearly 3 pounds of gray tissue, those signals become color, music, emotion, love, fear, memories, and meaning. How can that possibly happen? And here's the question that should keep every curious person awake at night. If your brain is responsible for creating every experience you've ever had, then how much of your reality is actually out there, and how much is being created inside your own mind? That isn't philosophy. It's neuroscience, it's physics, it's psychology. And strangely enough, it's one of the greatest mysteries science has ever faced. Because your brain isn't a camera recording reality, it's more like a scientist. It makes predictions, it fills in missing information, it edits what you notice. It ignores millions of details every second. Sometimes it even invents things that never happened. Every optical illusion you've ever seen, every false memory you've ever believed, every dream that felt real, every moment you've been absolutely certain about something that later turned out to be wrong, they all reveal one astonishing fact. Your experience of reality is something your brain actively creates. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying the universe doesn't exist. I'm saying the universe you experience is filtered, interpreted, reconstructed, and sometimes rewritten by the most complicated object we've ever discovered. And once you understand how that process works, you'll never look at your own thoughts, your emotions, your memories, or the world around you the same way again. So tonight, let's investigate a question that sounds impossible, but becomes more fascinating the deeper science explores it. Can your brain actually create reality? The strange thing about reality is that we assume it arrives in our minds exactly as it exists outside us. We wake up every morning, open our eyes, and believe we are simply looking at the world. We hear a bird singing and think the sound travels straight into our awareness. We touch a cold glass of water and assume we are felling the glass itself. It all feels effortless, immediate, and completely real. Yet this certainty hides one of the most astonishing discoveries modern science has ever made. Your brain is not recording reality like a camera. It is constructing an experience that allows you to navigate the world. That sounds almost impossible at first, because every instinct tells us otherwise. We trust our senses. We rely on them every second of every day. They guide us across busy streets, help us recognize the faces of people we love, warn us of danger, and allow us to appreciate the beauty of a sunset. If our senses were constantly creating reality instead of simply receiving it, wouldn't life become complete chaos? Surprisingly, no. In fact, the opposite is true. The reason your brain constructs reality is because it has no other choice. Think for a moment about your eyes. Most people believe their eyes are like cameras, faithfully capturing the world exactly as it is. But cameras and eyes work in fundamentally different ways. A camera stores images. Your eyes do not. Your eyes simply detect tiny packets of light called photons. These photons strike millions of specialized cells at the back of your eye known as rods and cones. Those cells don't send pictures to your brain. They convert light into electrical signals. That's an extraordinary detail that most of us never think about. Inside your skull, There are no tiny images floating around. There are no little sounds echoing through your brain. There are no colors painted onto your neurons. There is only electrical activity, billions of nerve cells firing in incredibly complex patterns. Somehow, from nothing but electricity and chemistry, your brain creates the experience of blue skies, green forests, your mother's smile, the taste of coffee, the warmth of sunlight, and the voice of someone you haven't seen in years. The experience feels effortless because your brain performs this miracle every fraction of a second without asking for your permission. Now here's where the mystery becomes even deeper. Light itself has no color. That statement sounds completely wrong until you understand what color actually is. Different wavelengths of light enter your eyes, but nowhere in nature is there something called redness or blueness. Those colors exist as experiences created by your brain. When light of a certain wavelength reaches your retina, your brain interprets it as red. Another wavelength becomes blue. Another becomes green. If another creature has different visual receptors than you, it literally experiences an entirely different world. Bees can see ultraviolet patterns on flowers that are completely invisible to us. Snakes detect infrared heat. Eagles perceive extraordinary detail from incredible distances. Mantis shrimp possess visual systems far more complex than ours, detecting forms of light humans cannot even imagine. So which creature sees reality correctly? The answer is both fascinating and unsettling. None of them. Each brain constructs the version of reality that best helps that species survive. Human beings don't see reality as it is. We see reality as our brains need us to see it. This principle extends far beyond vision. Consider hearing when someone speaks. Sound waves travel through the air as tiny vibrations. Your ears capture those vibrations and convert them into electrical signals. Once again, there is no sound traveling into your consciousness. There are only electrical impulses moving through your nervous system. Your brain transforms those impulses into language, music, laughter, or applause. Without your brain performing this incredible translation, the universe would be silent. Touch works the same way. You believe you are directly feeling the surface of a table. But what your skin detects are changes in pressure, temperature, and vibration. Those signals race through nerves toward your brain, where they become the sensation of roughness, smoothness, warmth, or pain. Even pain itself isn't simply a signal from your body. Pain is an interpretation. Doctors have documented extraordinary cases where soldiers wounded in battle reported feeling almost no pain until they reached safety. Their brains temporarily reduced pain because escaping danger mattered more than suffering from injury. In other situations, people experience severe pain even when no physical damage exists because the brain concludes something is wrong. Pain is real, but the experience of pain is created by the brain. Now imagine the enormous challenge your brain faces every second. Every moment, your eyes receive millions of pieces of visual information. Your ears collect thousands of sounds. Your skin constantly detects temperature, pressure, movement, and texture. Your nose samples countless airborne molecules. Your tongue distinguishes subtle chemical differences in food. If your brain tried to process every single piece of information equally, you would be overwhelmed within seconds. So instead, it does something remarkably intelligent. It filters. It decides what deserves your attention and what can safely be ignored. Right now, unless I mention it, you probably aren't aware of the feeling of your socks against your feet. You likely haven't noticed the pressure of the chair beneath you. Perhaps you weren't paying attention to the faint background sounds around you. Those sensations didn't suddenly appear. They were always there. Your brain simply decided they weren't important enough to bring into conscious awareness. This selective filtering happens continuously. In fact, neuroscientists estimate that your senses gather an astonishing amount of information every second, but your conscious awareness experiences only a tiny fraction of it. Most of reality never reaches your awareness because your brain quietly removes it before you even know it existed. Now think about how remarkable that is. The world you experience is already heavily edited before you become conscious of it. Your brain is both the director and the editor of your personal movie. And sometimes that editing process reveals itself in spectacular ways. Have you ever stared at an optical illusion and found that two people standing beside you saw something completely different? One person immediately notices the old woman. Another instantly sees the young woman. The picture hasn't changed. Your eyes haven't changed. What changed is the interpretation your brain chose to construct. The famous checker shadow illusion provides another astonishing example. Two squares appear to be completely different shades of gray. One looks almost black, while the other appears nearly white. Yet if you measure them, they are exactly the same color. Your brain changes what you see because it assumes lighting conditions matter more than absolute brightness. Your perception is not an objective measurement. It is an intelligent guess. That may be the single most important idea to understand. Your brain is constantly making educated guesses about reality. Instead of waiting for complete information, it predicts what is most likely happening based on past experience. Those predictions are so fast and so accurate most of the time that you mistake them for direct perception. Imagine catching a baseball. If your brain waited until it fully analyzed every visual signal before deciding where the ball would land, you would miss every catch. Instead, your brain predicts the future based on previous experience, continuously updating its expectations as new information arrives. You are not simply reacting to reality. Your brain is anticipating it every second of your life. This incredible predictive ability makes human intelligence possible. It allows us to read incomplete sentences, recognize familiar faces in poor lighting, understand conversations despite background noise, and navigate an endlessly changing world. But prediction has a price. Sometimes the brain predicts incorrectly. Sometimes it fills in details that aren't really there. Sometimes it convinces you that you've seen something you never saw or heard something that was never spoken. The very system that makes perception so efficient also explains why human beings can be fooled so easily. That realization doesn't make your senses useless. It makes them extraordinary. Because your brain isn't trying to create a perfect copy of the universe. It is trying to create the most useful version of reality. One that keeps you alive, helps you make decisions, recognizes danger, builds relationships, and allows you to understand an unimaginably complex world. When you finally grasp this idea, you begin to see yourself differently. Every sight, every sound, every sensation you have ever experienced is the result of billions of neurons working together in a silent symphony, transforming invisible electrical signals into the rich, colorful, emotional world you call reality. And perhaps the greatest wonder is not that the brain sometimes gets reality wrong. The greatest wonder is that, despite the overwhelming complexity of the universe, it gets it right often enough for us to build civilizations, discover the laws of nature, explore space, compose music, fall in love, ask impossible questions, and even wonder whether the reality we experience is something we see or something our remarkable brains are continuously creating? Have you ever been absolutely certain that something happened exactly the way you remember it, only to discover later that someone else remembers the same event completely differently? Maybe it was a conversation with a friend, a childhood memory, or even something that happened only a few days ago. You replay the moment in your mind with complete confidence. Every detail feels vivid. Every word seems crystal clear. Yet another person, equally convinced, tells a completely different story. Who's right? Our instinct is to believe that one person must simply be mistaken. But neuroscience offers a much more fascinating possibility. Sometimes both people are remembering honestly, and yet neither memory represents the event exactly as it occurred. What each person remembers is the version of reality their brain reconstructed. This is one of the most unsettling discoveries about the human mind. We tend to think of memory as a storage system, like opening a photo album or pressing play on a video recording. We imagine that every experience is carefully stored somewhere inside our brain, waiting to be replayed whenever we need it. But that isn't how memory works at all. Every time you remember something, your brain is not retrieving a perfect recording. It is rebuilding the experience from scattered pieces. It gathers fragments of sights, sounds, emotions, expectations, and previous knowledge, then assembles them into a story that feels complete. Most of the time, this reconstruction is remarkably accurate. But sometimes the brain fills in missing details without asking your permission. And once those details are added, they can feel just as real as the original experience. That means every memory you have is in a sense alive. It changes each time you recall it. Think about an old family vacation. Perhaps you remember the smell of the ocean, the warmth of the sun, the laughter of people around you. But are those details truly from the original experience, or have they been strengthened over the years by looking at photographs, hearing family members tell stories, or simply imagining the scene so many times that imagination blended with memory? Your brain doesn't always distinguish between what actually happened and what has been repeatedly imagined. That realization is both beautiful and unsettling. It means your identity itself is built upon memories that are constantly evolving. Now consider expectations. Imagine you're walking alone late at night. The street is quiet. The wind moves through the trees. Suddenly you hear a faint sound behind you. Immediately, your brain begins searching for an explanation. If you recently watched a frightening movie, you might instantly imagine someone following you. Your heart begins to race. Your breathing becomes shallow. Every shadow suddenly appears suspicious. But what if the exact same sound occurred during a peaceful afternoon walk in the park? You probably wouldn't even notice it. The sound hasn't changed. Your ears haven't changed. The only thing that changed was what your brain expected to find. Expectation shapes perception more than we realize. Scientists have repeatedly demonstrated that people often see what they expect to see rather than what is actually present. If you're told to look for danger, harmless objects suddenly appear threatening. If you're told to expect kindness, the same facial expression may seem friendly instead of cold. Your brain is constantly making predictions before your conscious mind even realizes it. Imagine reading a sentence with several letters missing. You can still understand it without much difficulty because your brain automatically fills in the gaps. Now realize something astonishing. It performs that same trick with reality itself. Every second of every day, the world reaching your senses is incomplete. There are gaps everywhere. Your eyes have blind spots where the optic nerve leaves the retina. Yet you never notice a black hole floating in your vision because your brain quietly invents the missing information using everything surrounding it. You don't see the blind spot because your brain edits it out before you ever become aware of it. How many other things does your mind quietly edit every day? Far more than most people imagine. Attention plays an equally extraordinary role. Many of us assume we're aware of everything happening around us. We believe our eyes faithfully capture every movement, every face, every object in our surroundings. Yet psychologists have performed experiments that completely shatter this belief. In one famous demonstration, people are asked to watch a group passing basketballs and count the number of passes made by one team. Most participants focus so intensely on counting that they completely fail to notice a person in a gorilla suit casually walking through the middle of the scene. Not because the gorilla was invisible, not because it moved too quickly, but because the brain decided it wasn't relevant. Think about how extraordinary that is. An obvious event can occur directly in front of your eyes, and your conscious mind never experiences it. Seeing isn't simply opening your eyes. Seeing requires attention, and attention is controlled by your brain. This selective attention explains why eyewitness testimony, despite being sincere, can sometimes be surprisingly inaccurate. Two people standing only a few feet apart can witness the exact same event, yet remember entirely different details because each person's brain focused on something different. Reality wasn't identical for either observer. Each experienced a personalized version shaped by attention. Then there are emotions. Perhaps nothing alters reality more powerfully than emotion. Think about how time seems to change depending on how you feel. 5 minutes waiting for important medical results can feel like an hour. 5 hours spent laughing with close friends can disappear in what feels like minutes. Time itself hasn't changed. Your experience of time has. Or consider how fear transforms ordinary situations. A small creaking sound inside your home during the middle of the day barely attracts your attention. The exact same sound at 3 o'clock in the morning suddenly feels mysterious. The house hasn't changed. The sound hasn't changed. Only your emotional state has changed. Yet your entire reality shifts with it. Love changes reality as well. Someone deeply in love notices tiny details about another person that everyone else overlooks. A simple smile can brighten an entire day. A familiar voice can instantly create comfort. The physical world remains exactly the same. The brain changes its interpretation. Even pain responds to expectation. Doctors have long known about the remarkable power of the placebo effect. A patient receives what they believe is effective treatment, and their symptoms begin to improve even when the treatment itself contains no active medicine. This isn't imaginary healing. People experience measurable biological changes because their expectations influence how the brain regulates pain, stress, and recovery. Expectation becomes biology. Now think about what that tells us. The brain doesn't merely observe reality. It participates in creating the experience of reality. Our beliefs can influence our emotions. Our emotions influence our attention. Our attention influences what we notice. What we notice influences what we remember. And what we remember influences our future beliefs. It becomes a continuous cycle, each part shaping the next. This is why two people can live through the same historical event and carry completely different emotional realities for the rest of their lives. The event was shared. The experience was personal. Your beliefs also act like invisible filters. Imagine two people reading the same news article. One walks away optimistic. The other becomes deeply pessimistic. The words on the page haven't changed, but each reader interprets them through years of accumulated experiences, assumptions, hopes, fears, education, and personal value. The brain is constantly asking one question: what does this mean? Not simply what happened. Meaning is constructed, and meaning often matters more than raw facts. This ability to assign meaning has allowed human civilization to flourish. We build cultures, traditions, religions, scientific theories, legal systems, works of art, and entire societies because our brains don't merely detect information, they organize it into stories that help us understand the world. Stories are how the brain creates coherence from overwhelming complexity. But stories can also mislead us. Once we believe a particular story about ourselves, perhaps that we're incapable, unlucky, intelligent, or destined for success, our brains begin searching for evidence that confirms it. We remember events that support our beliefs while quietly overlooking events that challenge them. Without realizing it, we become authors editing the story of our own lives. This doesn't mean reality is fake. It means our access to reality is filtered. And understanding those filters may be one of the most valuable skills a person can develop. Because once you recognize that your expectations, memories, emotions, and beliefs shape what you experience, something remarkable happens. You become a little more curious before jumping to conclusions, a little more willing to question your certainty, a little more open to the possibility that another person's perspective may reveal something your own brain overlooked. Science isn't simply teaching us how the universe works. It's teaching us how our own minds work. And perhaps the greatest lesson is one of humility. The world is almost certainly richer, deeper, and more complex than any single human brain can fully perceive. Each of us walks through life believing we are seeing reality directly, when in truth we are experiencing an extraordinary construction, one continuously shaped by our expectations, our memories, our attention, our emotions, and the countless invisible processes taking place inside the remarkable organ we call the human brain. Now we've arrived at the question that has fascinated philosophers, scientists, mathematicians, and curious minds for centuries. It is a question so simple that a child can ask it, yet so profound that even the greatest thinkers in history have struggled to answer it. Where does reality actually exist? Is it entirely outside of us, waiting to be discovered exactly as it is? Or is the world we experience something created within the extraordinary machinery of the human brain? The moment we ask this question, we must be careful. Some people hear it and immediately assume it means the physical universe isn't real. That isn't what science suggests at all. Mountains don't disappear because nobody is looking at them. Stars continue burning whether humans exist or not. The universe has existed for billions of years before the first human brain ever evolved. Objective reality almost certainly exists. The mystery is something far more subtle. The mystery is that objective reality and your conscious experience of reality are not the same thing. Think about that distinction. There is a world outside your mind. Then there is the world you actually experience. Those are connected, but they are not identical. Every color you have ever seen, every sound you have ever heard, every emotion you have ever felt, every memory you have ever cherished exists only because your brain transforms physical events into conscious experience. Without a brain, light is simply electromagnetic radiation. Without a brain, sound is nothing more than waves moving through air. Without a brain, temperature is simply the movement of molecules. Meaning, beauty, fear, joy, love, music, art, and sorrow do not exist as physical objects floating through space. They emerge inside conscious minds, and suddenly consciousness itself becomes one of the greatest scientific mysteries. How does nearly 3 pounds of biological tissue create an inner world so vivid that it feels more real than anything else? Scientists have spent decades studying neurons, electrical signals, chemical messengers, brain networks, and patterns of activity. We have learned an extraordinary amount about how different parts of the brain contribute to vision, memory, language, movement, and emotion. We can observe neurons firing. We can measure electrical activity. We can even predict certain decisions before a person becomes consciously aware of making them. Yet one enormous mystery remains. Why should any of this activity produce conscious experience at all? Imagine examining every wire inside a computer. You could understand how electricity flows. You could explain every circuit. You could predict every calculation. But nowhere inside the hardware would you find the experience of watching a beautiful sunset or remembering your childhood. The same puzzle confronts neuroscience. We can describe what neurons are doing, but explaining why those neurons produce the feeling of being alive is another challenge entirely. This is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness, and despite astonishing advances in science, nobody possesses a complete answer. Perhaps one day we will. Perhaps the answer will transform our understanding of ourselves as dramatically as astronomy transformed our understanding of the universe centuries ago. Now let us turn to another fascinating idea. Many people have heard that modern physics says consciousness creates reality. That statement appears everywhere on the internet. It sounds exciting. It sounds mysterious. Unfortunately, it is usually an oversimplification. Quantum physics certainly contains strange phenomena that challenge our everyday intuition. At incredibly tiny scales, particles behave in ways that seem almost impossible. Probability replaces certainty. Measurement plays an unusual role. Outcomes can only be predicted statistically rather than absolutely. These discoveries are astonishing, but they do not prove that human thoughts magically create the physical universe. What they do demonstrate is something equally fascinating. Nature is often far stranger than common sense would suggest. The deeper scientists investigate reality, the more they discover that our everyday intuitions frequently fail. The universe refuses to behave according to human expectations. And perhaps that's exactly what makes science so beautiful. Science is not the art of confirming what we already believe. It is the courage to discover when reality surprises us. That same spirit should guide us when thinking about our own mind. The brain is constantly building an internal model of the external world. Think of it as a simulation, not a fictional simulation like a video game, but a biological simulation whose purpose is survival. Every second, your brain predicts where objects are located. It estimates distances. It anticipates movement. It interprets facial expressions. It guesses intentions. It constructs emotions. It combines memories with incoming information to prepare you for what happens next. Without this internal model, you would be unable to walk across a room without falling. You couldn't catch a ball. You couldn't hold a conversation. You couldn't even recognize your own reflection. Your experience is not a passive recording. It is an active construction designed for action. Now consider dreams. Every night, while your eyes are closed and your body rests quietly in bed, your brain creates entire worlds. You meet people. You visit places. You experience fear, excitement, sadness, confusion, or joy. While dreaming, those experiences often feel completely real. Your heart races. your breathing changes, your emotions become genuine. Yet the entire world exists only inside your brain. Then you wake up. Instantly, your brain switches from one reality to another. That alone should fill us with awe. The same organ that constructs dreams also constructs your waking experience. The difference is that one model is guided almost entirely by internal activity, while the other is continuously corrected by incoming sensory information. Both are constructions. One simply receives constant updates from the outside world. This realization changes the way we think about certainty. How often do we assume our interpretation is unquestionably correct? How often do we judge others based on our own perceptions without considering that their brains may have constructed the situation differently? Understanding perception teaches humility. It reminds us that confidence is not the same thing as accuracy. It encourages curiosity instead of arrogance. The greatest scientists rarely begin with certainty. They begin with questions. That is why science advances. Every breakthrough begins when someone becomes willing to admit, perhaps my understanding is incomplete. This lesson extends far beyond laboratories. It influences relationships. Imagine two friends arguing over something that happened months ago. Each insists their memory is accurate. Each believes the other must be mistaken. But what if both are sincere? What if each brain emphasized different details, interpreted different emotions, and reconstructed the event through different experiences? Suddenly, the disagreement is no longer about honesty. It is about perception. Recognizing this possibility creates empathy. It encourages listening before judging. It reminds us that other people are not merely viewing the world from another angle. They are experiencing a reality shaped by a lifetime of unique memories, emotions, culture, learning, and biology. The same understanding changes how we think about fear. Many fears begin not because reality itself is dangerous, but because the brain predicts danger. Sometimes those predictions save our lives. Sometimes they limit them. A person terrified of public speaking may experience overwhelming anxiety before stepping onto a stage. Their heart pounds, their hands shake, their breathing becomes rapid, yet no physical threat exists. The brain has created an experience of danger based on expectation. The encouraging news is that predictions can change. Every time we learn something new, practice a difficult skill, or challenge an old belief, the brain updates its internal model. This remarkable ability, known as neuroplasticity, allows the brain to reorganize itself throughout life. It means your future experiences are not permanently trapped by your past experiences. You can literally reshape the way your brain interprets the world. Learning a new language changes patterns of thought. Practicing music strengthens entirely new neural connections. Meditation alters attention and emotional regulation. Therapy can transform long-standing patterns of fear. Education changes perception. Experience rewrites expectation. Growth becomes physically embedded within the brain itself. Perhaps that is one of the most hopeful discoveries modern neuroscience has ever made. You are not merely observing reality. You are continuously refining your understanding of it. Every question you ask expands your internal model. Every mistake teaches your brain something valuable. Every conversation introduces perspectives your own mind may never have generated alone. Curiosity becomes more than a personality trait. It becomes a biological tool for improving perception. And isn't that exactly what science has always encouraged? Not blind belief, not unquestioning skepticisms, but endless curiosity guided by evidence. Perhaps the most extraordinary conclusion is not that the brain creates reality in some mystical sense. It is that the brain creates your experience of reality with astonishing elegance, remarkable efficiency, and surprising flexibility. The universe provides the raw ingredients. Your senses gather fragments. Your neurons exchange billions of electrical signals. Your memories provide context. Your expectations make predictions. Your emotions assign importance. Your attention selects what deserves awareness. And from this breathtaking collaboration emerges the only world you will ever directly know, the world of conscious experience. That realization should not make us doubt reality. It should make us appreciate it even more, because every sunrise you admire, every piece of music that gives you chills, every laugh shared with friends, every scientific discovery, every work of art, every act of kindness, every moment of wonder exists at the extraordinary meeting point between the universe outside your mind and the remarkable universe inside it. Perhaps the greatest achievement of the human brain is not simply that it allows us to survive. Its greatest achievement is that it allows the universe to become aware of itself. The atoms inside your brain were forged in ancient stars billions of years ago. Over unimaginable stretches of time, those atoms became living cells. Those cells became nervous systems, and those nervous systems eventually evolved into minds capable of asking impossible questions. Questions like this one: can your brain create reality? After everything we have explored, perhaps the answer is more beautiful than either a simple yes or a simple no. The physical universe exists independently of us, but the reality each of us experiences is something our brain continuously builds, updates, interprets, and reshapes every waking moment. In that sense, your brain is not creating the universe itself. It is creating the only version of the universe you will ever personally know. And perhaps the most exciting thought of all is this: if understanding changes the way your brain constructs reality, then every new idea you embrace, every assumption you challenge, and every mystery you dare to explore does more than increase your knowledge. It changes the very world you experience.